In Peru, besides having the best weather we've ever had, and that they've practically ever had, I think I am a weather whisperer. Because when I go places, the weather turns out pretty good. So, but besides the weather, which was excellent, I got to be reintroduced to a principle that the early native people practiced there. And that means before the Spanish arrived and before the Incas created a territory, there were still people there. And for thousands of years, they have practiced something called Aini, which means, in essence, giving and receiving. I'll let you give to me, and then I'm going to give to you. And that there's this circulation going on. Aini, if you took the literal translation, would mean, okay, today for me, tomorrow for you. So there's this sense of giving and receiving, which can be difficult at times. It can be difficult at times. I do a whole workshop on just receiving. It can be difficult to receive. And it can be also difficult to give. And when that doesn't happen, things break down. What I love about a place like Peru is that if they didn't practice this, they wouldn't have had the civilization they had, and they certainly wouldn't have been able to have the culture that they have. Because Peru is not necessarily hospitable. Not only is it at a high altitude, but according to our guide, and I believe it, is that the land that can be cultivated for agriculture is only 3% of the whole country. 3%. And that 3% went up from 2% because the Incas developed terraces so that you could grow things up the mountain. Wow! I mean, think about it. That really takes some cooperation for people to thrive with that little bit of land mass available for agriculture, which means, you know, food, which a lot of people need. Until we don't. I've heard tales. So there's this idea of Aini, and yet that idea shows up in lots of ways. You know, the whole idea of giving and receiving, and actually accepting. It's not just giving and receiving, it's accepting graciously and giving freely. That whole idea of circulation shows up in other teachings. Emerson called it the law of compensation. And in the whole area of the law of cause and effect, we could spend a lot of time. We definitely get it in Beyond Limits, but there's so much to the law of cause and effect. And yet it seems like when we simplify this teaching or metaphysics or new thought, when we simplify it, it shows up as the law of attraction, which is so simplistic and doesn't do the whole thing. You can't just attract and have a life that is full if you're not using the whole law, all of it, which also includes the law of compensation. That there's this idea that as you give, you're going to receive, but you've got to give. There was 2 years that I spent on the law of compensation, 2 summers. One, we looked at the diamond cutter, which is a Buddhist teaching, and karmic management, which is another Buddhist teaching, which is all about if you need something, you are the one that has to get it flowing first. Compensation, Aini. Make it flow. And then there's the book. Actually, if you wanted to go beyond the book or Emerson, you could just do the law of karma. What you're giving out, you will eventually receive. That's very Buddhist. And then there's for those of us that took the S training. How many of you want to admit that you took the S training in the 80s? How many of you want to admit that, yes, you were around in the 80s? 70s? Oh, my. Oh, my. Whoa. Okay, we'll have brunch afterwards. Well, reunion. Well, whew. So, and the essence of est, for those of you that didn't take it because you didn't want to spend a whole weekend not going to the bathroom, here's the essence. Only those who took it could be laughing. The essence, what goes around comes around. We've heard it, it's jargon, and yet it's showing up everywhere. It's so amazing. And in a way, don't you know that? Check inside yourself. Doesn't that make sense? Doesn't it resonate? So why don't we do it? Why don't we live that way? Why aren't we always asking ourselves, what can I do today? Now, I know that some days you do, and then sometimes we go unconscious, don't we? Sometimes we end up at the end of our day and we become conscious that we really didn't know or notice anyone throughout the day. Not always, but sometimes. See, if these ideas are showing up in different cultures at different terms, with different terms, I should say, there's something universal that's trying to get our attention, and I want to bring our attention to it because we have an idea here that we can create a better world. And today I want to talk about creating a better future for these people, for the people that are up here, for ourselves, for the people that we love, for the people we don't even know. And how would we do that? Well, I was inspired to do this talk because I heard about a woman named Frances Moore Lappa, and she wrote A Diet for a Small Planet. Did anybody read that book? Well, I read it and didn't like it, and diet was one word, and yeah. And it also just seemed very fatalistic. Well, guess what? She thinks it is too now. She actually had sort of an aha, and that's what triggered me to really appreciate her. She said that she was looking at ecology and looking at how things were so limited, and she had like a breakdown. She had a breakdown when she went to a conference with many, many environmentalists speaking, and they were all speaking about how we were at the end of what the earth was capable of. And that if we didn't change right away, everything was going to come to a crashing halt. And she got so depressed, and she noticed everybody else was too. She said even though the speakers were dynamic and they were informed and they were inspirational about the problems, everyone was getting more and more deflated. She said she's watched everybody become less and less of themselves and walk out kind of like this, just like she did. And she said she became hopeless. How many of you have ever become hopeless? You know, it's not a bad place to be if in that hopelessness you also become open. How many of you become ever so depressed that your mind stops functioning? That too can be a holy place. Not the depression that is a circle, but the depression that is silent. Because in that silence, in that Great Depression that as she was looking at the state of the world and what we could do about it and seeming so hopeless, in the midst of that, the words of a great ecologist, a German ecologist, I want to get his name right just in case you want to research him, the words of Hermann Scheer came to her. And what she remembered him saying is that the sun provides 15,000 times our daily dose of energy that we need on the earth. And she said, well, that's quite a bit. Maybe there's hope. So from hopelessness, she went to hope. And after hope, she said, maybe something's possible. And that was the opening for the universe to start pouring ideas into her. See, we can't receive wisdom when we are holding hopelessness. But when we let the hopelessness make us empty, we will start receiving the information that we need for hope. Now, this is for all of us. You know, this is her story, but this is our story. Stories are powerful. Stories happen to everybody's soul. I know that there was a time when I was hopeless, and I got so silent that the answers started to show up. So what she did is she's written a whole new book. And what she says is that she realized that we have not hit the limits of nature at all. What we've hit is the limit of our work with nature. Nature's not limited. We've been limited. And then she said, as this is pouring in, it's not we need new gimmicks, and I'm going to use my word in this, we need a new consciousness. Because as long as we're coming from three things, we will always be limited in our ability to work with others, or the earth, or the planet, or other nations. The three things that we have that keep us limited, in her view, and this is so beyond limits. This is just, it's like she could have taken our class. The three things that limit us as a culture, as people, is that we continually believe in scarcity, separation, and status. We believe that there's just so much. And therefore, you hear that seeing is believing, well, believing is seeing. Einstein said it this way. He said, if you look at the theory and know what your theory is, that will decide what you observe. So when we believe in scarcity, we will get more scarcity. When we believe in separation, we are going to find reasons to separate ourselves from others. There's going to be, it's us against them. It's every woman for herself. I got mine first. I'm sorry. You put scarcity and separation together, and you will have competition for whatever resources are there. And then there will be hoarding. What she also discovered is that there's no lack of food on the earth, there's the lack of distribution of food on the earth. So there's separation, there's scarcity, and then the last one is status, which means it's going to stay the same. It's always been this way, and I know that I've said that myself. How many of you have ever said that yourself? That's just the same. It's always the same. Politics as usual. And I don't mean politics, just anything as usual. And yet we know that change isn't a natural attribute. The earth is always changing. I love it. Did you know the Andes are growing by 3 inches a year? Change happens. Who's looked at your body naked lately? Now tell me there's no change. Change is normal. And yet people will say that it doesn't change. You don't change. You're always the same. Do you like people that hold you in a light that says that you are the same as you were 10 years ago? No, you've changed. And when they try to hold you in that light, it doesn't feel comfortable, does it? That's one of the reasons I didn't like to go home for a long time, is because they still saw me as, I don't even want to talk about it, that I was in my 20s. I don't want to be held as the person I was 5 years ago. Because you know what? I'm doing my spiritual practice and I'm not the same. You're not the same. We can't. Change is what happens. It is the constant. So if we're going to give up this idea of separation and we're going to give up this idea of scarcity and status, what do we change to? This is her idea. She said, we will function and have prosperity and plenty on the earth if we learn 3 other ideas, lenses to look through. One is connectedness. That we're such a small planet, we can't be hoarding anymore. Your life, what you do in your life and in your country affects me. What we do in this country in my life affects everybody else. We've got to get connectedness. We also have to understand that heals separation, but we also have to understand this idea of, and I forgot it, it's where change. Change, that we can deny we can change. And here's the Center for Spiritual Living's take on this. We do not deny a fact. We deny it has to continue. Anything can change. You may be this way today, but it doesn't mean you have to be this way tomorrow. I may be this way today. It doesn't mean I have to be this way tomorrow. Yesterday, I decided to get a cold, I guess. Tim had one, people had them, and I just woke up and nothing. I took Dayquil. I was putting stuff down me like crazy. Nothing helped. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to be a mess going to church tomorrow. I'm going to have a hanky with me all the time. I'm going to have this strange sound to my voice. I'm going to be hacking and chewing. And then I thought, no, just because you're this way today doesn't mean you have to be this way tomorrow. I actually applied it. Ooh. We can apply it. You know, just because colds usually take this long, that's a fact. But it doesn't mean it has to be true. Anything can shift. Now, what do we do with this idea of scarcity? We've looked at connection as what we do instead of seeing separation. We look at change instead of status. When we want to eliminate scarcity, that means we're called to co-creation with God and each other. Because we can do so much more together than we can do individually by ourselves. What I love about the Incas is that they were a whole bunch of tribes. The Incas only means the king. It just meant the Inca. That was the royal family. What they did to create prosperities is that they brought tribes together. And the tribes started working together. And they could do so much more than the tribes individually by themselves. And then, not only did they work together in such a way that they had enough food, then they could build roads, and then they could build storehouses. And the storehouses meant that no matter what went on with the weather, everybody'd have food. There was no more starvation. Then they could build cities, and then they could outline all sorts of things. Why? Because they said, scarcity is a fact, but it doesn't have to stay that way. How can we create a system that makes sure everybody's fed? See, the civilizations that we look back on, many of them were based on what we know is true. But individually, see, we're not going to shift the greater population unless each and every one of us looks at how we can individually shift ourselves. Like, how can I be more co-creative? How can I be more connected? How can I be a greater stand for change? And that's, you know, it's a day-to-day process. So this month, we're looking at Pay It Forward. And I want to invite you to look at how you can take the good you've got, whatever blessing you've got, and pay it forward. How can you make a difference in some person's life? You know, I think that if we really were doing this, we would have a waiting list, at least a 5-year waiting list to participate in coming of age. If we were doing this, we would not have to close classes in junior church because we didn't have enough teachers that day. And if we were doing this, just even every day a little bit, then our food banks wouldn't be empty. I think some of you know this, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's important. When we had our Super Bowl contest with Denver, and people brought in soup like crazy because they didn't want me to wear that little Denver outfit. Which, by the way, I would look good in anything. Because I'd spruce it up. When we made it a contest with Denver, we brought in food like crazy. And I don't know that you know what the best part of this whole thing was, and it wasn't that I got to wear a Seahawks jersey. What the greatest thing is that when the lady came from the university food bank to pick up the food, she brought, you know, like a SUV. She thought she'd pick up a little food. And our whole lobby was filled. And she burst into tears because the food bank had been empty. How many cans did it take? And how much fun did we have? It makes a big difference. And so I want to close with a video I saw yesterday. I'm planning to do this talk, and this video shows up. It's actually an advertisement for an insurance company. but it's an insurance company from another country, from Thailand. Otherwise, I would get my insurance through them. Enough with Geico, you know? Really, the gecko's cute, but this is great. This is great. And I was told after first service that it's in another language, obviously, but there's subtitles down below, but some people couldn't see the subtitles, so I'll read the subtitles to you. So I hope you enjoy it. 3 minutes, and it's all about this talk. Let me help. For education.
เขาจะได้อะไรถ้าเขาทำแบบนี้ทุกวัน
What does he get for doing this every day? There you are.
เขาจะไม่ได้อะไรเลย
He gets nothing.
ไม่ได้รวยขึ้น
He won't be richer.
ไม่ได้ออกทีวี
Won't appear on TV.
ไม่มีใครรู้จัก
Still anonymous.
ไม่ได้มีชื่อเสียงที่มากขึ้น
And not a bit more. Mom,
เพราะสิ่งที่เขาได้
whatever
คื
he
อได้
does
แค่
receives our
ความรู้
emotions.
สึก ได้เห็นความสุข
He witnesses happiness.
ได้เข้าใจ
Reaches a deeper understanding.
ได้ความรัก
Feels the love.
ได้ในสิ่งที่เงินซื้อไม่ได้
Receives what money can't buy.
ได้โลกที่สวยงามกว่าเดิม
A world made more beautiful.
ในชีวิตคุณ
And in
อะไร
your
คือ
life,
สิ่งที่คุณต้องการมาก
what is
ที่
it
สุด
that you desire most?
ไทยประกันชีวิตเชื่อในความดี
Believe in good. So let's just take a deep breath and pray. Pray, bless our beloved coming of age participants, our young adults, our practicing young adults. Let's bless the spiritual companions, the leadership, past companions. Let us bless all who give, that they may feel in their hearts an incredible amount of appreciation and love and acknowledgement. And I give thanks that we allow the Holy Spirit, the great teacher within, to reveal to us what is ours to do, not to earn anything, but because it is the way of happiness. Let us listen, let us hope, and let us follow instructions. And so for whoever is willing to have this happen in their life, just simply in your heart of hearts say yes. And the revelation will begin. And so it is.